Hello, fire signs, and welcome to your reading. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the crystal I picked out for you guys and then pick you guys some cards. And so the crystal I picked out for you guys is called Argonite, and it's a coral looking crystal. This is a really powerful crystal for people who are really tapping into their spiritual abilities or are practicing any sort of spiritual healing, and it really helps to develop that spiritual side of yourself. So this to me tells me that you're about to go through a period where you're really stepping into this spiritual aspect of yourselves, whether you're trying to become more of a spiritual healer, meaning that you share your spiritual gifts with other people, or you're just trying to kind of like fine tune these areas within yourself. And by fine tuning, I don't mean that, you're just trying to get to this next part of your spiritual healing journey. I mean more so that you are entering a phase where you're going to stumble across in a happy kind of like way that you don't really expect these spiritual aspects of part of yourself, and also that you might want to share with other people. To me, this stone tells me a lot about how this is a time for you to really step into sharing these abilities with other people, talking about it, whether that's around friends who really support your spiritual development or are open-minded to this spiritual aspect of life, but really making sure that you're around people and you're sharing this with people who are open-minded to it, because being mindful towards talking about your spirituality around people who are just going to shut you down will just discourage you in this journey that you're going about. And there's nothing wrong with having friends that are that way. It's like just being mindful about which friends are kind of like your spiritual team, like people are going to support you along this journey, be open-minded. They don't always have to understand it themselves, but are open to hearing what you experience. And as you guys come together, it's more like you're filling in these puzzle pieces together where you're beginning to get this greater understanding of things. Because let's say you go to someone and you share the spiritual thing that you occurred, whether that's a certain dream or seeing a synchronicity or kind of connecting with your angels or whatever it is, having someone who is at least open-minded to that and can offer, you someone to talk to, that they're open-minded to it and they can help reassure you of your journey and help you to continue down it, or even talking about it with someone who maybe even understands it themselves that can offer their perspective on it too, so that you can be open-minded to maybe having different experiences down the road and how this is ever evolving. It kind of almost gives you like this sense of like development, being like, oh, this person's kind of like, they understand, or like they kind of have this support system for you, if that makes sense. It's almost like a gym buddy, where like when you go to the gym with a partner, sometimes it can really help motivate you. You have someone who can support you as you maybe do some gym moves that are more challenging. It also motivates you to get out. You have an accountability partner. It's kind of like the same when you have these spiritual friendships. And like I said, it's okay to have friendships and people who have different spiritual beliefs. Not everyone in life is going to agree on absolutely everything, but to have those certain people that are kind of like your spiritual team, like that is really important, especially during this time as you're kind of developing these gifts. So maybe asking yourself, being like, oh, if I'm going through this spiritual transformation over the next little while, like who would I really trust with this? Who do I think is maybe spiritual themselves, or is at least open-minded to what I have to say, and will maybe like further this exploration, right? So kind of branching off of that, I feel like you're entering a really explorative time of your life where new things are going to be popping up, and you're going to start questioning maybe some of the structures and also routines or work habits, whatever it is that you have maybe carried up to this point. It's really going to feel like a little bit of an aha moment, but it will feel a lot more natural. If you're someone who struggles with change, which sometimes you can be, that fiery side of yourself is almost like when you think about having a piece of paper and you light the fire to it, it's like you release it, it burns, it turns into ash, and then from there you have like this blank slate to work with, right? So that kind of fiery energy is here. So the way you move about change within this next little while is going to feel really natural, and it's going to feel actually really positive. So if you're someone who sometimes fears change, do not worry during this time, because it's really just going to come about naturally, and to really lean into just like exploring in life right now and being like, oh, well, I'm feeling called to like take this art class, or I'm feeling called to go and take some photos today, or I'm feeling called to maybe like connect with this person more. Just like following those little inklings, because let's say you say let's say you're someone who has like a stable friend group in your life, or let's say, you know, you've had a certain job for a certain amount of time, like you might start kind of questioning work structures, or like wanting to kind of feeling this desire to meet some new friends during this time. So this is a really big time for you guys to be collaborating, whether that's within friendships, or if you're any sort of small business or artistry, just really trying to come together and create together. And it doesn't even have to be something you do that's serious. Like it can be something like where, you know, you reach out to a friend and be like, hey, let's do an art night. You can do it virtually or get together, maybe go outside, like paint, or go out and like have a picnic. It feels like a really communicated portion of time. I don't know how to phrase that. I guess like a time where communication is really important, and a time where collaboration is really important. So this is where you're going to find new friendships, or kind of old friendships that maybe you didn't give as much time or energy to, really start to evolve. And as you're kind of going through the spiritual process, it does feel like during this time to really focus on those spiritual friendships, the ones that you feel like you can be completely open with and really just be authentic with and really share your journey with, like ones that you don't feel like you have to shy away from really sharing these like deeper connections you're having in life, or these kind of realizations, because you need someone who's basically not going to be like, you're crazy. You need someone who's going to be like, oh, that's really interesting, and validates your experiences, because all your experiences are valid. And there's a very big difference when we share like our intentions or our spiritual development with someone who supports us and really validates our experiences, versus sharing it with someone who is very closed off and just like can't doesn't know how to validate someone else's experiences just because they don't have it themselves, if that makes sense. Like it's like if I taste a cookie and I'm like, this tastes good, and I hand it to you and you taste and you're like, that's not very good. And so thus you've labeled the cookie as not good, right? When to me, it could be a good cookie, but it's just to you that it's not. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. And it's basically to say right now you need people to say like, you know, this cookie doesn't taste good to me, but it does to you, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be that deep about a cookie, but it can be about anything in life. And I feel like you guys really need that support system, and you've been trying to like manifest that support system. You've tried to manifest these spiritual friendships in your life, and maybe you've struggled because maybe you haven't met people that have that same literal fiery passion, or like that same kind of like, maybe you've struggled to find people that kind of like have that same mindset around spirituality and such. So this is a really important time to really dive into that development, really explore and be open-minded. Like for example, if you're someone who's really into astrology, and then you find yourself, let's say, getting into like Celtic tree astrology, or maybe you get into tarot cards, but then you start being like, oh well, like that's not something I usually do. Or let's say you're, you know, a painter, and you find yourself wanting to take photos or write, and you're like, oh, that's not what I do. I'm a painter. Really watch when like that dialogue comes through, because this is a time to be like, when you catch yourself doing that, to be like, oh, I really want to explore actually, like why do I feel this like desire to create? Like maybe I should, like, you know, let's say, you know, in the painter example, if you're feeling that desire to like go out and take photos, you're like, why can't I just go out and take photos? Just because I'm a good painter doesn't mean I can't go out and like take some photos for fun. Like maybe they turn out good, maybe they don't. Why can't I just like explore that inner child in me? And it feels like maybe some of you growing up didn't really necessarily have that kind of nurturing, you know, creative structure. And so now is your time to like really heal that. And this is really going to be a big phase for you guys, where you start exploring this creative side of you, both in like your spiritual aspect and in literal creativity, where you just start to have fun, and you embrace that inner child, and, you know, maybe don't take things as seriously. Don't, you know, if you find yourself being like, oh, I can't go take photos, I'm not good at that. It's like, no, you have to release that and be like, if you were a kid and a kid came up to you and said, you know, I can't make this, like, you know, it's like hand painted art where you like literally just put paint on your hands, and kids like put it on a wall or put on kind of like a sheet of paper or something. It's like, imagine a kid just being like, oh, I'm not good enough at that. It's like, there's no such thing as not being good enough to create art. And that's kind of like the mentality that's going to be shifting over this next little while. And just really, yeah, once again, exploring yourself, whether that's exploring, you know, your creative side, exploring your spirituality, exploring different friends and friend groups, like not even friend groups, just like exploring friends, like trying to be open to meeting people, exploring like your sexuality, like whatever you want to explore, literally going out and exploring in nature a little bit more, or exploring different, if you always take like a certain route, be like, oh, I kind of want to try this route today. You know what I mean? Hope that makes sense. I'm going to pick you guys some cards. And I just cleansed my deck. We're going to pick you guys a couple cards, see what's going on, see what kind of, I feel like you guys maybe have been feeling like you need some clarity on a few things, so hopefully this will help. I'm going to set the intention to kind of give you guys some clarity and kind of set some intentions with these cards. Okay, so my fire signs. I can feel it. Fire signs. I don't feel like it's this card on top. I feel like the way I shuffle is very weird. It's like I wait till I feel like one card feels heavier. So these two felt fire signs. Not this card, not this card. Yeah, this one. Okay, and then let's flip them over. So let's give you guys some clarity, help you guys set some intentions. This is very interesting. So we got the Seven of Swords, and as you can see here, there's kind of like this nature area, and then there's kind of like this more like urban landscape, and this person has a bunch of swords and their hands are full that they kind of have to leave two behind. So this could almost, to me, represent some sort of family or friend kind of issue that might be happening where you feel like you're carrying like a really big load and it feels like you are trying to work through it, but then you are carrying so much that you kind of like almost have to do like two trips, if that makes sense. Like if you're carrying so much that you're looking back and being like, oh, I still have to do with all that, and then it kind of is discouraging and you're kind of trying to figure out how to lighten your load. And to me it almost feels like the kind of like simpler resolve to this would be like to say that it is okay to sometimes like lay the swords down and just like walk away from it for a bit, spend some time in nature, and then come back, and you might find that some of the swords that existed there before might not be there anymore, because there's like literally this fiery aspect of yourself where sometimes you get really passionate about things, or you're really, you know, and sometimes you just want to deal with it and you want to get it all over with. That is my food that is cooking, so sorry if you heard my little beep beep beep. But to me, this message is basically saying that, like, as much as you don't want to, sometimes take space from things that really feel frustrating to you, whether that's like you're in a literal argument with like a friend or partner or family member. Like, take some space from that, take care of yourself, and whatever that looks like, just going out in nature, going for a walk, whatever it is, and revisit it when you feel like you're in a way clearer mindset, because you might find that a lot of the issues that were there before might actually naturally dissipate. And then also the way you approach the argument will feel a lot more clear, and there might be a lighter load. Like, instead of having 7 swords to like carry, and like swords are such hard things to carry, right? Because they're sharp and it's like they're heavy, and you can't just like throw them all in your arms and like take one trip, like, you know, the stubborn person that I am, where, you know, you go to the grocery store and you're like, I don't want to do 2 trips, I'm gonna just carry everything like this. You can't do that with swords. So when you come back, you actually might find that the load is lighter, and you might only have like a couple swords to have to deal with. And I think sometimes that might scare you guys to be like, oh, I don't want this like issue to go unnoticed. It's not going to go unnoticed, but taking care of yourself is so important, because you need to take care of yourself first before you're able to deal with this conflict, or like in a very healthy or sustainable way. Otherwise, you're just going to come at it with this like fiery passion, because it does matter and it's relevant and it's valid to feel that way, but you really need to take care of yourself first. Take that space and then come back to it when you're kind of feeling a bit more in a clear mind. We also got the Queen of Pentacles. We got this cute little bunny down here. We got the pentacle here. You got this badass here sitting in this chair with all these roses around you, and the mountains in the background. So a couple things are indicated here is like, one, there's like angelic realm kind of surrounding you guys during this phase, meaning that you're really supported in what you're doing. You're at the right place, right time. Don't question yourself too much just because you're going through difficulties, which is kind of like represented by the mountains, when you're going through kind of like really big inclines and then you kind of hit like a downcline and you're like, what is happening? And you kind of go through this like up and down, kind of like a roller coaster. You're at the right place at the right time. Really stand grounded in where you are, kind of like be a boss ass. I don't want to say, like, be a boss in what you're doing and own the fact that you can't push the tide. Just be where you are, like where you are now, and be a boss at it. Be a boss ass, whatever you want to call it. Boss ass human, boss ass magical person, boss ass artist. You know what I mean? It's like, own the role that you are stepping into right now, and don't try and like push the tide, push the river. Just own where you are in this moment now. Your angels are supporting you. They're here to tell you that you're meant to be where you are right now. It's a very heart-oriented time. You literally have roses, like this heart energy all around you. So even if you aren't like feeling at your best, you actually have a lot of like loving relationships surrounding you right now. So this is a really good time to like, once again, like own who you are, own what you have at this moment. And you might be surprised, like when you shift to that mentality, how much like love you realize is in your life, whether that's romantically or within your friendships, and you start to feel more supported, and you start taking on like this literal queen role where you're like, I'm a boss at this. Like, you know, I don't have to, like, for example, let's say you keep focusing on like getting this promotion or like having this, or like, you know, once you move or like once you have a partner, it's like, no, like I'm a queen at where I am right now. Like I'm owning it, and that doesn't dictate who I am now. What I have right now is enough, and I can own that. And with that, you kind of attract like that really good energy, and like that kind of external validation or happiness that you might be seeking kind of starts to like disappear, and you start finding it in this like gratitude of the moment, like being here now and like honoring your journey. Like even that kind of like the mountain where you're kind of like, you have times where you're going up and you're going down, you're just like honoring that like flex and flow of life. And you're like, you know what, even if I'm not feeling the best right now, I'm like a queen. I'm a queen. I'm not doing my best right now. I'm the queen of just letting myself rest, letting myself honor these emotions. And you know what? And I'm like, it doesn't take away from like who I am just because I'm going through a difficult time, if that makes sense. Which kind of brings us to the next card, is like Five of Pentacles. To me, that says like almost like there, you know, you're in an uncomfortable phase, but you're working with what you have. And there is like a really good omen surrounding you. Like there's like kind of like this like almost like church window here to be basically like your spiritual side of you is not lost when you're going through a difficult time. It is still there and it's still present. I think a lot of people think spirituality always has to be like, you're feeling great and you're feeling amazing. That's not always the case. It's okay to work with what you have and try to keep comfortable with what you have, and just accept that. Like, for example, when you're in a snowstorm and it's cold, it's like, yes, you have everything that you could work with right now. You have this big coat to try and keep you warm, but it doesn't mean that, you know, it's not going to be a little bit uncomfortable. It's about accepting that, yes, it's cold. I'm still cold, even though I'm working with what I have. It's about like accepting that and being like, this is just, you know, this is uncomfortable. And no matter what I do, it's like, I can't try to force this to be any other way. I can't affect this weather that's going on. You know what I mean? It's like, don't blame that on yourself. You are working with the resources that you have right now to deal with like these circumstances. And once again, you can't control the weather. And the spiritual side is like, it is on your side. It's kind of like your angels are once again like looking after you, kind of like we talked about with the rabbit here. Like we have this like spiritual window literally being like, I see you, I'm validating your experiences, you're doing everything you can with the like what you have. I don't know if you heard that. My little timer going off. I also, I don't edit my videos because I'd rather keep it real. And and I thought this was going to be like a lot shorter, but so many more messages needed to come through for you guys, which actually was like perfect timing, because I was just about to say is like, to kind of like close up your reading is like, it's okay to honor where you are now, even if you don't feel good. There's a difference between like validating your experiences and what you're feeling now, and accepting it and understanding you're working with everything that you can right now. There's a difference between understanding that versus like being like, it's cold and you're like, you basically want to change this weather. You can't change the weather, but you can work with what you have to make yourself feel as comfortable as possible during an uncomfortable period of time. But the spiritual guidance, like the spiritual side of yourself is still there. Like lean on that. Embrace, you know, what you're going through, really feel it, even if it is uncomfortable, because eventually this snowstorm will pass, things will warm up, we go through different seasons in our life, and we can't push it, and it just makes it harder, you know what I mean? It's like the difference between being outside and complaining that you're cold versus just being like, well, it's cold outside, yes, it's uncomfortable, but me complaining about it isn't really going to change that, if that makes sense. Is like, really just acknowledging that this is just kind of like what is happening at the moment, and it might not be what you necessarily want to hear, but actually a lot of peace comes to you once you accept what's happening. And I think just leaning on the spiritual side of yourself, leaning on like the love that's surrounding you, your really good support and your friends will really help you get through like these difficult times, and like taking space for yourself, like really honoring this exploration you're meant to do during this period. And I hope you guys enjoyed your reading. Let me know in the comments what you think. You can tag any fellow friends that maybe want to check out their readings, or maybe you have some other fire signs that would like to check out this reading, see how it resonates with them. If you guys would like to donate, it's not necessary, but it does help me to continue offering readings as accessibly as possible, especially in this space. You can do so by checking out the link in my bio, or you can also book a personal reading if you're interested in learning a bit more and getting a little bit more personalized. I appreciate all your guys' support. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know, send me a comment, let me know what resonated with you. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye.